Welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, September 11th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's popularity in a swing Pennsylvania county that has served as a bellwether for the nation for a while now, as we see that this county in particular, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, has resulted with Donald Trump dropping in favorability across the county that helped usher him to victory in the 2024 presidential election in the state of Pennsylvania. This county in particular, which has seen again its fair share of going for Democrats and Republicans, is now saying they want to pass on Donald Trump. Now, the results here from the poll are quite clear. They actually did a survey in Bucks County early on last year where we saw roughly a year ago that a considerable portion of, Bucks County residents had approved of Donald Trump in his former time in office and approved of him going into the 2024 election. But what we have now found in the most recent survey, that 53% of likely voters, now likely is an important caveat here when discussing a lot of the data, likely voters, 53% view Trump unfavorably and 42% see him favorably. Now, this is a result that puts Donald Trump at an overall negative 11% across this county in particular. A very interesting result, especially in comparison, thinking about where it was in terms of margin in the last cycle, and also, too, the way they had viewed him previously. Looking at the way that these voters, too, also faced similar Democrats and Republicans up for conversation. Governor Josh Shapiro, the Democratic governor right now, has a 55% favorability rating in the survey. Just 27% of residents view him negatively. And so, looking at the results here, the numbers are quite clear. The data in this county is not good for Donald Trump. And Pennsylvania, again, this bellwether county, which is particularly interesting thinking about, how close some of these elections actually are. Pennsylvania, on the overall margin itself, was decided by roughly 1.5 points. And so you could not find a better county to help us understand the dynamics of the state than Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which did go for Joe Biden after going for Donald Trump. And you'll see that the swing here in 2024 is one that wasn't super massive, but was often indicative of what we saw in the state itself. Biden won the state of Pennsylvania in 2020 by roughly 1.2%. This time around, Donald Trump is winning it by about 1.5 points. That's roughly a 3-point swing. Bucks County saw a 4.5-point swing, roughly on par with what we were seeing across the national stage. But the point is very clear. In a county Trump won against Kamala Harris, he's now down 11 points. And Republicans across this county, too, in a lot of the local elections, they actually do a poll here on what they're finding for the district attorney in the county. What are they finding? Republican incumbent has 43%. Democrats have 49%. The Democratic contender for sheriff in the county, and oftentimes, remember, Republicans typically do better on issues like crime and domestic policy related to crime. And you're finding that in this county in specific, the Democrat leads the Republican incumbent, might I add, 48 to 43. The trickle-down effect of Donald Trump's unpopularity knows no end. In every single race we've seen surveyed in this county in particular, the numbers aren't great for the GOP, and if anything, they indicate an imminent loss coming up in the 2026 midterms. Just as many of the regular elections, and not even just polls, have foretold the expectations for Republicans in 2026 that they should not be super high. We saw in Virginia that the 11th Congressional District special election found the Democrats won this race by a massive and whopping 50 percentage points across this district, standing directly in contrast with the 2024 cycle when Democrats won this House election by just 33%. Now, just obviously 33% is massive margins, but a 17-point difference in just a year, and off the presidential, a 16-point difference, leading to a 50% margin in a race nobody talked about, nobody invested in, and nobody, quite frankly, thought would end up in the way that it did because it was so Democratic that an outperformance to this degree might be expected in a swing district where there's energy and enthusiasm on the Democratic side because it's flippable. Not only was this race not flippable, but Democrats didn't focus, and yet the energy enthusiasm was still there. Because voters in Virginia, like they were in Florida, like they were in Iowa, and like they are in many other parts of this country, and we have seen in many of these special elections, are turning up and turning out away from the Republican Party. And this issue is well documented. Donald Trump's pollsters, Fabrizio Ward, they came to him and said, "You are in trouble." Tony Fabrizio, who's responsible for his polling in 2024 and I believe 16, came to the president and Republicans right around July 4th, the passing of the big, beautiful bill. And what we saw was that Donald Trump was underwater in 28 swing counties, toss-up counties, including Bucks County as one of them, that is now finding with an individual focus on the county itself, Trump's popularity has dwindled from where it was a year ago. The same time a year ago, he was leading on debate day, actually, a day before, a year and a day ago, was Kamala Harris's and Donald Trump's debate, which is really interesting, if you ask me, just thinking about the timeline here. But either way, the numbers were higher then, which sort of tells us exactly what every other data point has been screaming in our faces, that an unpopular president will not lead his party to victory in the midterm elections, that an unpopular president will not be in a position where massive and legions of his supporters are going to turn out in a midterm cycle with his name not even being on the ballot. It's a calculus from the White House and Republicans at the highest, point, who do believe adamantly that Donald Trump has changed the dynamics of the elections. And while they are right that he has changed the dynamics of American politics, he does not done it all to be positive for his political party. And looking at where we've actually seen a lot of the fall off in terms of key constituencies the Republicans used to be able to consistently rely on in midterm cycles, special elections, and off-year races, they no longer can. I'm thinking white suburban voters, suburban women in specific that have barreled away from the Republican Party since the 2020 election. I'm talking about huge bastions of older voters and higher educated voters that have found themselves not at home when they did with Romney and McCain, that now find themselves retweeting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You're getting to a point where Donald Trump has become, yes, appealing to a lot of different demographic groups that historically had turned their backs on the Republican Party, and this past cycle exposed that. But when he's not on the ballot, and when he's not the one campaigning, overall, voters sour on him and the party that he represents. And this isn't to say, Donald Trump of the campaign is nothing like Donald Trump in office. The way in which he went about doing his campaign strategy, sure, he promised the tariffs. He promised this war on transgender Americans and all of these different things, but to the degree we have seen it implemented. 200 executive orders later, when he barely, in contrast, obviously did a lot of them in the first term, but barely touched them in contrast to this second term, we are in an entirely different day and age. And guess what? He was winning the PR battle on the economy, on social issues, because people were hurting and struggling and wanted somebody to blame and an administration to blame alongside with it. And Biden's administration, even if it wasn't Biden at the top of the ticket, after all, it was the Biden-Harris administration, and that's what ultimately did in Kamala Harris in a lot of these states. And so thinking about where we are now, a year later, the economy's not fixed. He said on day one, he would do the tariffs and everything would miraculously come down in prices. But look what hasn't gone down in prices. Gas prices, egg prices, all of these different things that Donald Trump promised and swore he would fix, he is not. Are we finding that more and more people feel as if they are more able to buy a home today? That they feel safer about where their children are and where they go to school? That all of these different things that, again, were the winning points for Trump in the last cycle that might be the same reasons Republicans lose in 2026. And this county is a perfect example. A huge white working class population, and, outskirts of a major city, that lends itself to being a more competitive district of a mix between suburban areas, more urban-ish, not really, right? Not city limits, but thinking about where you are, what we're talking about in terms of Bucks County is that this is a bellwether, and it is for a reason. And it provides us so much understanding about what direction this state is likely to go. Because when Biden won it by 4.4, Biden won the state. When Trump won it by a point, Trump won the state. And thinking about what it might tell us in 2026, Shapiro's up. but he has a net 28% approval, 27% approval in this county. Or 28. No, I was right about the first time. Think about that. Trump is down 11. The Democratic governor is up 28. What do you think that means for 2026? That maybe the Republicans who eked by in 2024 may not again in 2026, including many of the Republicans, including a toss-up district that surrounds this county. Over here, Brian Fitzpatrick, who in 2022, came to a point where he was winning by just 9.7%. 2024, a little bit better. Trump did better in the district, but certainly a district that is going to be targeted here. And so thinking about the midterms and thinking about what this means, if this is at all a microcosm of what is happening across the state of Pennsylvania, which it very well may be, Republicans are in trouble. Because we've seen it in a multitude of special elections and all of the polling data available to us. And yet again, another data point, this time hyper-focused on this county. Donald Trump and the Republican Party are not in a great position. And Trump's popularity sinking in this county, not doing well for himself or for his party, is going to be a very telling story after the 2026 midterms, and certainly one that explains what is likely going to be this inevitable defeat the Republicans feel across this country. And with elections like Virginia 11th only reaffirming so much of what we have come to understand in many of these races and what we are seeing now in battleground states and in battleground districts and counties, especially bellwethers that often vote alongside whoever is elected president. There's much to be learned and much to be understood in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, as well as across the state. Help orient us for the 2026 midterms and what we might expect to see not only in Pennsylvania, but across this great nation. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.